Well, I feel like I've turned into like a 2 or 3-year-old lately because I have been loving asking the why questions. So just a couple of why questions that I have been asking, and I'd love to hear some of yours. For example, why do some people like olives?
You don't?
I don't. I recognize that we might have some disagreements at this point. Why do some people like cringe at the thought of getting older, and some people are like, yes, like I love life, like help, you know, I'm like excited for more life lived. Why do some people have like crazy piano abilities at like age 7, and other people like would sit down at it and they're like, I don't even know what to do when I touch this. Anybody else have any why questions? What are why questions that you ask? Why are some sprinkles really crunchy and others are kind of like mushy? Anybody else have any why questions? There's gotta be something. Maddie, what's yours?
Why do we itch?
Why do we itch? Why do we itch? Yeah, that is weird. Like, why would God make it so that that's a thing? Okay, what's your name back there?
Isa.
Isa, what's your question?
Why do pants have fake pockets?
Oh! Isa, that is the winning question. I don't even care what the other questions are, although I do. Anybody else have any more? Yes.
Are you talking to her or me?
I seriously wish I could remember your name, but I know you have a green shirt on, so Greenie, yes.
Why do hot dogs come in packs of 10 and hot dog buns come in packs of 8?
That's a great why question. Great. Wow. Any other why questions?
I wish
Yes,
I was paying attention to those things.
Stegosaurus even exist?
Wait, time out. What was that?
Why does Therizinosaurus even exist?
Sarazenosaurus? Oh, I don't know what that is.
A dinosaur.
Why have I never heard of that before? That's my why question. Anybody else? Another one why do mosquitoes exist? That's
Original sin.
Original sin, says Maddie. Okay, before we completely fill all of our time asking these questions, although I'd be quite entertained, I'd like to invite a Simway into the room. Why was a Simway late? That is our next why question. All right, just kidding, a Simway. I think you're great. You're great being late. Okay, so I actually really love just kind of like, you know, speaking off the cuff, but for some reason I was really on a roll when I was writing this talk, so I'm gonna kind of read it to you. You know, I'll try to be dynamic and stuff as well, not like really boringly read it, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started with this. So we all wanna know why. It's human nature. It's understandable, and as soon as a child turns 2 or 3, that's probably the most frequented word from his mouth, why. And we all know what the most offensive and unacceptable answer is to our why question, which is, because I said so, right? So I think that it just makes sense that why worship is the title of this night. I think it's a really good question, and sometimes why do we worship? I mean, I think sometimes we can kind of like get this idea that's like, why would God make us to worship him? Doesn't that just kind of mean that he's probably like either like a really self-centered God, or maybe he's just got like low self-esteem and he needs like us to remind him like he's so cool? You know, like I've kind of wondered that before. Like, why would he just like make us like focus on him all the time? So I'm gonna begin this with a discovery that I had over the past several months. And this discovery is that we all worship something. We all give someone, something, or some concept a significant amount of our attention and focus, and ultimately our heart. Some of us worship being liked by others. We obsess over it when we decide what to wear, what to say, how to be. Some of us worship being unique, consumed by how to be different, how to stick out, how to catch someone's eye with his zany style and exciting charisma. That was when I was on a roll. Some of us worship our phones or a screen of some kind. We give more time to the screen than any other one thing. It begins to consume us, and we can't imagine life, or a good life anyway, without it. Some of us worship money. We might not bow down to an altar of green paper, but we worry about making enough of it. We orient our lives toward a certain number, embracing that as being success. We love when we can get it. And we worry when we can't control how much is leaving our bank accounts. Some of us worship friendships. This one's kind of hard because relationships are beautiful and we were created to be in them. But when we obsess over the approval of certain friends or having enough friends and think that our worth is in solving our friends' problems, maybe being their savior. Has anybody ever fallen victim to that? Trying to solve every one of your friends' problems, and they're like, then I will be the perfect friend. Then ultimately we're gonna come up dry. So right now, before I continue on, I just wanna ask you all, close your eyes, and just ask yourself, what is it that I worship? What is it that I give my time to day to day? What is it that I offer myself to on a regular basis? What is it that I worship? For me, I've noticed that I've fallen into this thing where I worship time. I have this idea that I need to be in control of what I'm doing with my time at all times. I have this okay, this is gonna sound crazy. I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but when I go for a ride in the car, which happens a lot because I do a lot of driving, I have this idea that I first of all, as my Spotify is playing, I need to discover a new artist because otherwise it's not a successful day. I need to also think about everything, every problem that I've ever had and come up with a solution for all those problems because my thoughts are definitely going to get me somewhere. I also think that okay, yeah, maybe I could pray a decade of the rosary on this really long drive that I could pray, 10 rosaries or even just have a really great conversation with God. But I actually really need to think about this relationship that is having an issue, and I probably need to solve that in my head. Does anybody else ever have that kind of just yeah, I'm just gonna. So I've realized that I worship this idea that I need to control my time, my thoughts. I need to, I give all of my attention, I give my heart to my thoughts, thinking that they're going to be more important than actually the thoughts of God, the reality of who God is and what He can put into my heart and tell me. Something that I learned recently is that to worship, in the Old Testament it means to bow down low, but in the New Testament, to worship actually means to kiss. So I think it's a really intimate thing when we worship something, when we worship someone. When I give my time to my thoughts, I'm kissing my thoughts, I'm worshiping my thoughts. When I give my heart to that. And another thing is that before I say this, I actually am gonna have you guys turn to each other. And now I had you kind of think about this, but now I want you to turn to each other and share something, especially when you think about it as intimately as a kiss. Okay, what is it that I give my time to? What is it that I hold so dearly, that I give my time to, that I'm not willing to part with? Turn to somebody and share something with them.
This is so connected.
I'm gonna give you 10 more seconds. bit. And just in one word, if anybody would like to raise their hand and just say with one word, you don't have to go into any elaborate conversation about it, but does anybody want to share in one word what they have kind of been thinking that they worship with their heart, their time? Yes. Choices. That's a powerful one. Mm-hmm. Ambition? Yeah. Uh-huh. Grace? Happiness.
I was gonna say
Pleasure?
pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Approval. Mm-hmm. Any others? Yeah. Family. Mm-hmm. These are some really good ones. Anybody else want to share anything? Yeah. Success. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Relationships with guys.
Relationships with guys. That's a courageous thing to say. That is so true.
Honest.
Mm-hmm. It's honest. It's honest. That's been something that I've fallen victim to as well. Yeah.
Friends.
Friends. Mm-hmm.
My comfort zone.
Comfort zone.
Ooh.
Melissa?
Worry.
Worry. Isn't that the worst?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we know worrying is bad, so let's do it all the time. Like,
Worry about our
Anybody else? Anybody else? Yeah. Freedom. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to share what they worship? Okay, now I'm gonna share a thought with you that if you have a journal, I think it's important to write it down. This is something that I heard from somebody, and it has just stuck with me ever since. And it is, we become like what we worship. If I think about money all the time, if I'm thinking about what money can get me or that my value of success is on the amount of money that I make, I become somebody who views life in a really utilitarian kind of way. Like, what is this going to get for me? What is this going to do for me? How am I going to benefit from this? If I worship time, like I was saying earlier, I'm just going to constantly be on the go and I'm never going to be willing to sit down and be with myself. If I worship relationships, I'm always going to be just seeking approval. We become like whatever it is that we worship. And going further from that, we trust whatever it is that we worship. That one's hard. Because if we figure out what we worship from the time that we put into it, from the way what we put our focus on, then that means if I'm putting all my focus on success, like success in school, then that means I'm becoming, like that which I worship. That means I'm trusting that which I worship. I'm just trusting that grades are somehow everything that I need. And I'm kind of forgetting where I actually came from. So we become like what we worship. We trust what we worship. If I say I worship God, but I spend my time and energy and all my focus on how I'm going to make my mark in the world, am I actually worshiping God or am I worshiping myself? So now the question is, why worship God? I began this whole thing by the thought of, well, why would we worship somebody who's just kind of like just needing us to worship him? And the more I dive into that, the more I think about, okay, who is God? He's good. He's actually completely selfless. How many of you have ever struggled to believe that God is selfless? Anybody? How many of you have ever struggled to believe that he is loving in and of himself? Yeah. That's something that I've, some more of those why questions kind of come creeping in. So right now I'm kind of going to give like my God pitch, all right? I'm going to sell you all on him. Or at least I'm going to try. Wow, now I just put the pressure on really high. So I'm just going to say why I think he's the only thing that's deserving of our worship. And that worshiping him is actually good for us. It's actually not for him at all. He doesn't, he doesn't create us and then he's like, okay, now I need you to love me. Like, come. Like, he doesn't do that. He actually creates us and then he's like, now I'm going to give you the opportunity to see me, to look at me. I'm going to reveal myself to you so that when you look at me, you can actually become more loving too. So the beautiful thing, when we worship God, like I said before, we become like what we worship. So when we worship God, we become more like God. I'm sure you're all familiar with 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind. So these are all things that when I focus more inwardly, I become more inwardly focused, shockingly enough. I become more concerned. I become more worried. I become more selfish. When I turn and put my focus on what is outward and where I come from, which is God, then I become more selfless. I become more trusting. I become more whole. I become more patient. I'm actually gonna finish up here pretty quick so that we can have quite a bit of time to worship tonight. I'm gonna share a little Bible verse that I came upon. I don't know, some point in my life. And this Bible verse is from Psalm 34:9, and it's learn to savor how good the Lord is. Most translations, actually, this isn't the wording, so if you want this wording, you have to ask me what it is. Sorry. I got it from the New American Bible, and maybe it's only actually my New American Bible. I don't know. I've never found it anywhere else besides the Bible that I read, so crazy. Anyway, but I really like this because learn to savor how good the Lord is just means that, like, there's not something that we have to, like, do this so that you can do this. Or, like, read about Jesus so that you can become like a better teacher. You know, like we all can do those by reading about Jesus, but this is just like, actually just like learn to savor how good the Lord is because the Lord is good to be savored. And for me, that's what worship is. When I think of savoring something, I think of like that really good donut that I just ate last night on my tongue, you know, like I really did. Like on my tongue, you know, like I want it to stay there. I want that taste to be like forever on my mouth. Like I want that to stay. And so when I learn to savor how good the Lord is, man, like I can just sit there and like all that I'm doing is just soaking him up. And actually I'm becoming more like him by being willing to participate in that. So that's Psalm 34:9. Learn to savor how good the Lord is. And I'm going to read this, and I'm going to have you guys all close your eyes. I know it's really difficult to let go of the things that we worship because it means letting go of control. But I'm going to read this psalm to you and tell you what will happen when we put our trust, put our worship, orient ourselves to the Lord. I sought the Lord who answered me, and he delivered me from all my fears. Look to God that you might be radiant with joy, and your faces may not blush for shame. When we look at God, we don't need to blush for shame. When we look at God, we will be radiant with joy. When we look at God, we will be delivered from our fears. In my misfortune I called. The Lord heard and saved me from all distress. The angel of the Lord who encamps with them delivers all who fear God. Learn to savor how good the Lord is. Happy are those who take refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you holy ones. Nothing is lacking to those who fear him. The powerful grow poor and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. You can open your eyes now. So I just want to walk us through really quick a couple of the lines that I just want you to stick in your heads. And that's we become like what we worship. We trust what we worship. And if we become like what we worship, then looking at him and beholding him will form us into our eternal selves, which is the selfless, happy, free selves that we all actually want. But when we try to grab those, that's when we completely miss them. So right now, I'm gonna have all you guys stand up.